Imagine being 72 years old, enjoying a hard-earned retirement after decades working for the Postal Service out in the Midwest. For 5 solid years, you've taken your blood pressure pill every single morning. You never skip a dose. You trust your physician implicitly, and you follow the instructions to the letter. Everything seems perfectly fine. But then, a few months ago, things start to shift. Your daughter notices you. A guy who used to easily log 3 miles before breakfast collapsed in your recliner by 10 a.m., totally drained. You stop making those weekend runs to the local hardware store. You have to tell your grandkids you just don't have the energy to play outside anymore. Then comes a Tuesday afternoon where you stand up from the kitchen table and your legs completely give out. You only catch yourself by grabbing the countertop. When your family checks your pulse, your heart is barely beating at 4-6 beats a minute. Everyone just assumes it's the natural aging process catching up with you. Your doctor never warned you this was a possibility. But here's the reality that changed everything for this man. Getting older wasn't what was stealing his life. It was his daily pill. Day by day, it was silently dragging his heart rate down to a dangerously unstable crawl. He was on one of the top 2 most heavily prescribed blood pressure medications for older adults. And it brings up a massive question that almost no one stops to ask. When it comes to Amlodipine and Metoprolol, which one is actually the safer bet as we get older? The truth is probably going to surprise you, and it hinges on a crucial medical reality your doctor likely hasn't had the time to explain. We really need to get into this today. Before we put these 2 drugs head to head, there's a foundation concept you have to grasp, because without it, the rest of this won't make sense. At 70, your body doesn't handle prescription drugs the same way it did at 50. It's not just a minor shift, it's a drastic biological change. And in a rushed 5-minute clinic visit, physicians rarely get the chance to break this down for you. Here's what's actually happening inside. Once you cross that 60-year mark, your artery walls get stiffer. They lose that rubber band elasticity they had when you were younger, making your systolic pressure, that top number on your reading, incredibly stubborn. That's the number most closely tied to strokes, heart attacks, and cognitive decline, which makes picking the exact right drug absolutely vital. But it's not just your arteries, your liver, which is the chemical plant responsible for breaking down almost every pill you swallow, slows its roll. Medications linger in your bloodstream longer and build up to higher levels. So, a dose that worked perfectly well when you were 5'5" can silently turn into massive overload by the time you're 73, even if the milligram number never changed. On top of that, your kidneys filter waste as fast. Your nervous system is sluggish to react to sudden blood pressure drops, which is why standing up too quickly can easily cause a fall, and your heart muscle grows way more sensitive to anything trying to alter its rhythm. You have to keep this perspective in mind. A drug isn't just universally safe or dangerous. It becomes one or the other based entirely on the biological environment it's entering. Let's kick things off with Amlodipine. Understanding the mechanics of this medication is the only way to figure out if it actually belongs in your daily pill box. Amlodipine belongs to a class of drugs called calcium channel blockers. The name might sound complex, but the way it works is pretty straightforward. With every single heart, calcium rushes into muscle cells lining your arteries, making them squeeze and tighten. That squeeze is exactly what drives your blood pressure up. Amlodipine essentially acts like a bouncer, blocking a lot of that calcium from getting inside those cells. The payoff? Your artery walls relax. They open up wider and your blood flows through with way less friction, bringing your numbers down. For older adults, this specific mechanism is a game changer. Remember how we talked about those stiffening arteries? Amlodipine tackles that exact issue head on. It zeroes in on the vessel stiffness that makes high systolic pressure so notoriously hard to treat in your golden years. Clinical data consistently backs this up, showing it's one of the most powerful tools we have for bringing down that top number and cutting stroke risk. But here is the dosing detail you can't afford to ignore. For younger folks, doctors usually kick things off at 5 milligrams a day. If you're over 6 or 5, though, the baseline starting dose really should be sliced in half to just 5 milligrams. That's not doctors being over-paranoid. It's a required adjustment because your aging liver processes the chemicals slower and your vessels are way more sensitive to sudden pressure drops. They can always bump it up slowly, usually over a couple of weeks to a max of 10 milligrams, but only if your body is comfortable handling it. By the way, if you're getting value out of this breakdown, hit that subscribe button and drop the word SAFER down in the comments. It lets me know you're tracking with me. All right, let's flip the coin and look at Metoprolol. This medication takes a completely different route through your body, and knowing the difference is exactly what separates an empowered patient from some who just blind swallows whatever is handed to them. Metoprolol is a beta blocker, while amlodipine focuses on relaxing the arteries. Metoprolol goes straight for the engine, your heart. Your heart is covered in beta-1 receptors that act like lit antennas for adrenaline. Whenever you get stressed, exert yourself, or honestly just stand up. Adrenaline floods your system, telling those receptors to make your heart pump faster and harder. Metoprolol blocks that signal. It forces your heart to slow down and pump with less force because the engine isn't working as hard. The overall pressure in your plumbing drops. If you are a senior who has survived a heart attack, if you're battling heart failure or dealing with a sketchy heart rhythm, give your heart muscle this kind of break can later save your life. It drastically cuts the oxygen demand on a heart that's already struggling. In those specific scenarios, it's way more than just a blood pressure pill. It's a protective shield for your heart. But dosing this for older adults is walking a tightrope. Physicians usually start incredibly low, around 25 to 50 milligrams of the succinate version, which is a fraction of what a younger patient might take. You only bump that dose up at a snail's pace, keeping a very close eye on the resting heart rate. And here is the absolute golden rule with this medication. You can never, ever quit taking it cold turkey. Stopping abruptly triggers a massive adrenaline rebound. Your heart rate and blood pressure will violently spike, which can easily trigger severe chest pain, a heart attack, or even worse. Any changes have to be micromanaged by your healthcare provider. Now that we got the mechanics down, let's compare them side by side, because this is where theory crashes into real life. Take the story of a 69-year-old retired school teacher. She had been on Metoprolol for 3 years. Slowly, a soul-crushing fatigue crept in, making her feel decades older than her actual age. Her doctor swapped her over to Amlodipine. Within a couple of weeks, the brain fog and exhaustion vanished, and she felt completely rejuvenated. But fast forward 6 weeks, and her ankles ballooned up so much she couldn't squeeze into any of her shoes. She literally traded one set of miserable side effects for another. Her experience proves the ultimate point here. Neither of these pills is just flat out safer. They both come with baggage, and how they hit you depends entirely on your unique biology. With amlodipine, the biggest headache is peripheral edema, basically fluid swelling up your feet and ankles. It happens because the drug does a great job relaxing your arteries, but doesn't do the same for your veins. Gravity takes over, and fluid pools in your lower half. It doesn't mean your heart or kidneys are failing, but it is incredibly uncomfortable. And if you already struggle with balance, heavy, swollen legs become a real fall hazard. You might also deal with a flush face, feeling dizzy when you stand up, or the occasional heart flutter. Metoprolol brings a totally different set of problems to the table. Deep, heavy fatigue is the #1 complaint. People describe losing their drive, feeling a heavy blanket of exhaustion over their entire day. It can also drag your heart rate down in the danger zone, causing you to pass out. And if you're dealing with lung issues like asthma or COPD, it can actually make it harder to breathe, even at moderate doses. This brings us to what I honestly believe is the most overlooked crisis in senior healthcare right now. You don't just take these risks in a vacuum. You take them alongside everything else sitting in your medicine cabinet. The average person over 6'5" is popping 4 or more prescriptions a day. Some are taking up to 8 or 10. A bunch of different doctors prescribe them, and they might be perfectly safe on their own. But when you mix them inside your body, they start fighting for the same metabolic breakdown pathways. Amlodipine gets processed in the liver by a specific enzyme called CYP3A4. The problem? Dozens of other common drugs rely on that exact same enzyme. If you take certain antibiotics, antifungals, or even drink a glass of grapefruit juice, you create a traffic jam in your liver. The amlodipine backs up and floods your bloodstream at way higher levels than intended. Suddenly, you're experiencing amplified side effects, massive swelling, dizziness, and a huge risk of falling, all from a chemical reaction nobody bothered to warn you about. Metoprolol has its own dangerous cross reactions. If you stack it with other heart rhythm drugs like digoxin or pile it on top of additional blood pressure meds, it can easily slam the brakes on your heart rate too hard. The TED gets debilitating, you risk blacking out, and your safety margin practically vanishes. These interactions aren't rare anomalies. They are happening right this second to millions of older adults whose medication lists have never been audited as one complete picture. So, considering all of this, what do the actual medical experts say? This is where the clinical evidence meets real-world treatment, and it's a lot more nuanced than people think. Major cardiovascular and hypertension organizations universally agree on one thing. Blood pressure goals for older adults have to be custom, tailored. If you're otherwise robust and healthy, aiming for a top number under 30 is generally the standard. But if you're a frail senior managing a bunch of other medical conditions, pushing those numbers too low can honestly do more physical damage than the high blood pressure itself. When you look at the clinical guidelines, the divide between these two drugs is crystal clear. Amlodipine is heavily favored as the go-to first-line defense for standard, uncomplicated high blood pressure in seniors. Because it directly targets stiff arteries and reliably slashes stroke risk, it sits at the very front of the treatment algorithm. Metoprolol occupies a completely different space. The guidelines explicitly say it should not be your first choice for basic high blood pressure. They reserve it for patients who desperately need to shield their heart. People who have survived previous heart attacks, have documented heart failure, or deal with diagnosed arrhythmias. In those specific situations, its ability to slow the engine down is absolute essential. The critical takeaway is this: medical guidelines don't pick a universal winner. They make it perfectly clear that the best drug depends entirely on the underlying reason your blood pressure needs treating in the first place. The diagnosis dictates the prescription. If this breakdown is making sense to you, type the word guidelines down in the comments. And double check that you're subscribed so you don't miss our next deep dive. So, to answer the big question between amlodipine and metoprolol, which one is actually safer for seniors? The honest answer is neither. The safest choice is the one that flawlessly aligns with your specific biology, your unique heart, and your personal health history. Amlodipine takes the trophy if your main issue is high blood pressure driven by stiff, aging arteries and you have no underlying heart condition. Metoprolol takes the crown if your heart is already damaged, your rhythm is unstable, or taking the workload off the heart muscle is the absolute top priority. But just knowing this science isn't enough. You have to take this information in your next appointment. Here are 5 non-negotiable questions I want you to write down, save in your phone, and bring to every Sing medication review from this day forward. Question 1. Based on my specific health profile, is this medication the absolute most appropriate first-line option for someone my age? Question 2. What exact side effects should I watch out for in the first 4 weeks? And at what point do I need to contact you? Question 3. Has my entire medication list been cross-checked for possible interactions with this new prescription? Question 4. What is my specific blood pressure target, and has it been adjusted for my age and overall frailty? Question 5. How frequently are we going to reassess if I still need this drug? And is there a trigger point where we consider stepping down the dose or swapping it out? Any doctor who genuinely values your partnership in your healthcare is going to welcome these questions. They won't see you as a difficult patient. They'll respect you as an informed one. Think back to that 72-year-old retired mail carrier who grabbed his kitchen counter just in time to keep from hitting the floor. The man whose family thought he was just fading with age, when in reality his medication was draining the life out of him. After that terrifying close call, his daughter pushed for a massive medication audit. His physician stepped back, looked at the whole picture, his medical history, heart function, and full prescription list, and carefully transitioned him off the beta blocker and onto a very conservative starting dose of Amlodipine. It was a gradual, meticulously monitored swap. Within 2 months, his resting heart rate bounced back to a healthy range. His stamina flooded back in a way his daughters described as someone wake up from a deep sleep. He got back to his morning walks. He hit up the hardware store on Saturdays. He finally got down on the living room floor and roughhoused with his grandkids for the first time in over a year. That's not a medical miracle. That is simply what happened when medication decisions are made with the right data, the right questions, and a real partnership between a patient and their doctor. Your blood pressure medication isn't a minor detail you can just throw on autopilot. It's a major decision that requires your active involvement and a physician who treats the person you are today, not the person you were when the script was first written. This video is strictly for educational purpose and does not replace the advice of your personal physician. Never stop, start, or adjust any medication without consulting your doctor first. If you found today's video valuable, please hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell, and let me know down in the comments. Are you currently taking Amlodipine, Metoprolol, or both? Your personal experience might be exactly what someone else in this community needs to read today.